Well, hello everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, GIO Shop Talk, Strategic Planning Explained. My name is Amy and I'm the Operations Manager here at National States Geographic Information Council. If you are unfamiliar with our organization, NSGIC exists to advance effective national coordination of geospatial information by supporting state-level cooperation. We serve as a national forum for the development of capable and future-oriented geospatial leadership. If you'd like to know more information on how to get involved with us, please visit our website, www.nsgic.org. I will also pop that address into the chat box shortly. Just some reminders for our call today. All attendees have been muted on entrance, and there will be time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So please place your questions into the chat box and they will be answered and be read aloud at the end of the presentation. Additionally, a recorded version of this webinar will be made available afterwards, so be on the lookout for that email. And with that, I will now turn it over to the presenters. Thank you again for joining us.
All right, thank you so much, Amy. This is Aaron Doucette with AppGeo, and I'll be the moderator a little bit here for today's presentation. And you will hear from our seasoned team here at AppGeo as we interview 3 geographic information officers that are responsible for 3 recently completed strategic plans to help explain and demystify them for you all. You'll learn what the process involved, how the planning process engaged their respective communities, and why each of them believe so strongly in having a strategic plan. So whether your state is in the development and operation stage or much further along, in our experience, having a GIS strategic plan is an essential tool for growth, funding, and enrichment of your GIS program. And as I mentioned in today's presentation, you'll be hearing from not 1, but 6 different perspectives on this topic at the various stages of implementation. We'll be looking at the why factor behind kicking off the strategic planning process, covering what the process actually entails in reality, and then taking a closer look at what the results have been on the GIS communities that we've personally worked with. Of course, this discussion wouldn't be complete without the opportunity to hear and answer your questions. So as Amy mentioned, please utilize that chat box throughout the presentation. I'm sure there'll be some good banter going on in there throughout, but if you have specific questions, we'll get to them at the end, and I expect you'll have some thought-provoking ones, especially for this group. So with that, allow me to quickly introduce our panel. We're joined today by some esteemed guests from across the GIS community. We've assembled this great panel for you all today, which I think is our largest and by extension most experienced panel to date. And we're honored to have with us today a star-studded cast that includes Megan Compton, the Geographic Information Officer of Indiana, Aaron Fashaway, the State GIS Coordinator for Montana, and Matt Peters, no stranger to many of you here, I'm sure, the GIO of Utah. I know they've got some great stories to share with you all, and I'm personally really excited to have all of you here with us today. And they're all joined by my colleagues here at AppGeo. That would be Kate Hickey, Michelle Giugiani, and of course, Bill Johnson. So with that, Bill, I'd like to hand it over to you, maybe cast a little more light on our guests here today and kick it off with our first question.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron, and appreciate everybody joining us this afternoon. I really love doing these webinars when we have outside guests, and today's group is really special. They're not only awesome colleagues that we've just completed working through this strategic planning process with, but these are folks that we've actually become good friends with over the years, particularly through NSGIC. And so, before this webinar started, we were all online a few minutes ahead and just enjoying a lot of laughs together. It's just going to be a lot of fun going through this today. So where we want to start is talking about what is it that caused you to want to do a strategic plan? Now, I know the 3 of you here as our guests today each have very different circumstances and different reasons why you wanted to kick off a strategic plan. So I'm going to start with Matt Peters from Utah. And Matt, you've got a very interesting perspective about why you wanted to do the strategic plan that I hadn't heard prior to us working with you on the Utah plan. So why don't you explain that for us, if you would?
Well, thank you, Bill. Yeah, Utah has had two strategic plans done. One when I was just a punk kid at AGRC, now UGRC, and one fairly recent. And of course, the first one kind of just helped us get organized, helped us get our web service kind of pathway going. This was in the early days of a lot of those things. And the second one was really to figure out how to engage and get results out of non-traditional GIS folks, because our ultimate goal is kind of, there shouldn't be an agency in Utah that doesn't use GIS in one form or another. But there was other things like, one was a selfish thing. I'm retiring in X years, and I thought, what? I need kind of some guidelines to keep me more focused as I work towards retirement and make sure I don't leave any messes behind. I think when I think of strategic planning, like in the early days, I think you got to look out at other states and say, oh, what is this state doing? What things do they support? 911, taxation, elections, things of that nature. You can probably look at those things and say, yeah, that's what I need to focus on at the start. However, I think when we get to the second plan, that's where I felt like the real strategy starts to come in, because we're trying to engage new customers in new ways. And I think a real challenge becomes, how do you create value and tell others about it? I think you all need to sit back and kind of ask yourself, what is the outcome I want from my state? And I want all agencies to touch GIS during some point during the year. But you as an agency, or you as the GIO, you need to make choices in what you do so those things can happen. And I think that's when we think about that second strategic plan, it's like, yeah, we have the basics and now we need to dive a little deeper. And that's kind of what led us to this point, Bill.
Great, thank you. Yeah, what I really like about your answer, Matt, is very often when these strategic plans happen, you're looking at the existing customer base, the usual suspects, if you will. But you were looking for the unusual suspects. Who are the agencies that aren't using GIS yet that probably ought to? And I think that's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to switch now to Megan Compton, and Megan is in a very different situation. She is in the state of Indiana, where longtime GIO Jim Sparks preceded her. He had that job for over a decade. And so she walked into a very mature program in Indiana. And really it's about making this her own strategic plan, and taking that lead and making sure that all of the things that are working so well that were set up under Jim can continue and flourish and grow. So Megan, let's get into that with you and find out, what was on your mind when you decided to kick off a strategic plan.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So you set it up very well. When coming into the office, it was a mature office. It was, and Jim did an amazing job, really, absolutely building the foundation. So I had a lot of folks asking us, okay, where do we go now? What's your vision? Where are we headed? And I said, hold on, let me find my desk. We'll get there. So one of those reasons for doing a plan was to kind of help us figure out what that was. But in Indiana, in our office, we are absolutely all about a mantra of collaboration. And that was really important for us to continue. So the plan couldn't just be made in our office. It needed to involve everybody across the state. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do one that reached broadly and brought in those stakeholders and folks to give us their opinion. We thought we knew where we needed to go. We wanted to have that validated. In some cases it was, and in other ways, we wanted to see what we were missing, because there's always something that you don't know that people are looking for. So it was give us an opportunity to listen and hear what people have to say. So it's funny when people want you to talk about your vision, but you do so by listening. And that was really important for us in the very beginning. And it really helped us confirm that vision, and we were on pace with the community. The other piece that was important to us is our office. We didn't have any funding. We had a large responsibility without any piggy bank to use along the way. So we've gained a lot of legislative support over the last few years, and with the funding being a challenge and some folks saying, well, this might work for you, but where are you going? What's your roadmap look like? So the strategic plan helped us do that as well. So cast the vision outside, but also help us figure out where we're going. My little smart art drawings of where I think our roadmap is wasn't going to do it anymore. I had to actually do a little bit more strategy behind all of that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Megan.
Yeah.
And our third panelist is Erin Fashaway in Montana. And Montana is unique in that the state GIS program is actually housed at the Montana State Library. I believe it's the only one in the country that's housed in a state library. So Erin, let's ask that same question of you now. What was it that caused you to want to do a strategic plan for Montana?
Thanks, Bill. Well, honestly, it was you. I had developed a relationship with Bill as a GIO of New York, and I reached out to him one day because that's what NSGIC is all about, forming awesome relationships with your partners across the states. And I said, hey, I feel like I'm kind of spinning my wheels here. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. Do you have any suggestions? We had just come off of some significant budget cuts and layoffs in 2017. And we were trying to regroup, and we were kind of, I think my exact phrase was, our heads were a little spinning at that point. There's a lot of distractions that come day to day, and there's a lot of really awesome distractions that we might want to jump on. But then I realized that we were kind of getting in the way of progress and moving forward. And so he had suggested first asked if we had a strategic plan in place, and we had not had one since 2010. We received some I think federal FGDC CAP grants to create those first round of geospatial strategic plans back in 2005 and 6. That's when we were just starting a council, really starting the spatial data infrastructure and our cadastral. And so we're similar to Utah. We have a very mature GIS, but again, post major budget cuts, and me as the new GIS coordinator, and just really trying to really understand where we want to move forward, and then how our partners had perceived us, and just ways to eliminate some of the distractions that were coming our way. We're seeing a lot of implementation of GIS across state agencies, and a lot of demands from the unusual customers and unusual partners. And so trying to prioritize our next 5 years. And that's why we wanted to start the process of creating that geospatial strategic plan for the state of Montana.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass the baton now to my AppGeo colleague, Michelle Giorgiani, to ask the next round.
Thanks, Bill. I am actually going to not ask a question now. I'm going to take us back up a step to talk about the fundamentals. Some people on the call have probably done strategic plans before, some may not, some might be wondering what it's all about. So I just want to go there first. And you'll probably hear also Megan or Erin mention business plans at some point in this conversation too. So it'd be really important for you all to understand what's the difference and the value that each brings. And we did both a strategic plan and business plans for Montana and Indiana. So if you look at this graphic up at the top in the orangey tones, that's the strategic plan. So the strategic plan, it really just focuses on the vision for the future, and it explains the why and the what, and gives you a general description on how you're going to reach those goals that are going to help you achieve the vision. On the flip side, a business plan, which is shown in the greeny tones, that describes how to achieve a goal that's been identified in the strategic plan in more detail. It gives you like an action plan, step by step. So if we put this into the context of a map, in the strategic plan, you may have decided to go visit a new place because you need to expand your horizons, and you generally know which of the several routes that you should take to get to the new place. Whereas a business plan is going to describe how you get to that new place in more detail. It'll describe when to leave, how much fuel to buy, where to have meals, what the trip's going to cost, who should go, and how many bathroom breaks will be needed for me. So we can move on from there. And now I'll get back to asking our esteemed panel some questions about the process. So now we've covered the motivation factors behind doing a strategic plan, and we've identified and defined and compared what a strategic plan is and what a business plan is. So now let's talk about what the strategic planning process and experience actually is like. So for instance, I want to hear from you three about what you thought was surprising about the process, or what do you think was the most challenging part for you? Or what did you like best about the process? What was the most challenging part? I just said that. Thank you. And then because I'm a project manager and I was, managing 2 of these 3 projects, naturally, I want to hear from you all about how did you manage to fit strategic planning in your day-to-day responsibilities? So I'd like to start with you, Erin. Do you want me to repeat those questions?
I've got 4 here in front of me. I don't think you need to repeat them. Thank you.
Thanks.
Gee, what was, now you moved my questions. What was the process like? Well, I won't get into too much of it, but I learned a lot about just the procurement side of things and trying to use different contract mechanisms. So I thought that was really helpful in my day-to-day job. The process was pretty good, and I'd say the worst part was it was in COVID, and I would have loved to have Kate and Bill and Michelle out here to do these in-person stakeholder meetings and interviews, because we have a really great committed community in the state of Montana, and so it was really well run. I think that I didn't intend. I don't think I planned for the amount of attention it would have taken from my day-to-day workload, but it was so well worth it. We basically really took an awesome snapshot of what our community was feeling, what their needs were, and by that we had several workshops. I think we had pretty good stakeholder input. Those workshops, we basically got at the questions of, how are we doing as the state's GIS shop? What are the needs? I think one of the more surprising things that came about was some of the requests for technology, like we do monthly cadastral updates. We had counties asking for daily. And so, is that the future of our profession? Will it be more of a daily update rather than a monthly or an annual update? I'm trying to think some of the others questions. Could you go back one slide? Thank you. What did I like best? I think just doing that deep dive into our state, really just trying to get a good understanding of how we were serving our users' needs through the SWOT analysis. And I think there were things that we didn't find surprising. Communications was one of the first things that was addressed as our major priority that we need to dive into. And we have a business plan written for that. We're starting that process. How are we fitting this now into our day-to-day workflows? Well, we have from the process, we have a schedule in place for the entire plan. We're going to try to achieve it in about 5 years, and then these business plans will take us through however the amount of time it will take to complete that particular plan. but basically we're able to take the plan and put that into place with our staff. And so I just really enjoy continuing to coordinate with this group of people, and then of course all of our partners across the state of Montana.
Thanks, Erin. I'm gonna go to Megan next. Megan, could you talk a bit about what you thought the process was like, and surprises, challenges, and how you got it done?
Sure, I'd love to. I think in the beginning just had to be really brave and really vulnerable and be okay with that. We certainly did not have it all figured out, and sometimes for those of us who are in charge of things or really are shown as or needing to lead the effort, we get a little concerned if we don't know exactly where we're going, but we had to be okay with that. And we certainly learned from it. It's okay if people call the baby ugly. It'll help you, you'll learn from it, you'll grow. So we just had to be good there. I think one of the most challenging parts for me was I hadn't done a strategic plan, and certainly not one that was set up like this. So that was something that I just had to learn the process, what the plan does versus what it doesn't do, and how it sets you up, but you need to go figure out the how. That was the business plan part. And this group with AppGeo really helped me understand, okay, the strategic plan is like the vision helps set the course, and then these business plans have been really, really helpful in helping us figure out, okay, what's the next step to actually make this happen. I think creating a strategic plan is a real partnership effort. That's like definitely with our community, but it's also internal. So it was a partnership effort with AppGeo and with that crew and our crew internally. We brought all of our team to as almost every one of the meetings with AppGeo, so we didn't have any breaks in the knowledge, and we brought everybody to the table. But when we were able to hit our stride, and AppGeo understood like this group understood the spirit of our plan, it was the way that it just flowed was amazing. So that was probably one of the most enjoyable parts. And I think there's a return on investment for a strategic plan. That sounds kind of strange to think about the people power part, but the more you put into it, the more you actually focus, the absolute more you'll get out of it. So if you don't do a plan where you're a passive participant, it's this process requires you to be extremely active and extremely it's for you. What we're building, it was absolutely building it. The really understanding, Bill mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it was hard for me to take. You're really building a GIO strategic plan. And as the GIO, I had to say, oh, this is my plan. This is how we're going to do the things for the office. And once I figured that it was like my roadmap, and when I'm constantly, calling Erin or other folks with NSGIC saying, hey, what are you doing? Or how do we do this? This plan was going to help us figure that out. So as the GIO strategic plan, it really charted our course, and that changed the way I sort of embodied the process, and helped us, I think, helped me certainly conceptualize what could come out of it, and it's been amazing.
Thank you, Megan. I am going to turn it over to Matt now to wrap up with his explanation of the process. What did you think the process was like, Matt? What did you get out of it?
Well, I think in the first plan, there was a lot of driving and a lot of bathroom breaks. The second plan, our focus was a little different. But with the first plan, it was definitely hearing from the user community on the directions we needed to go. On the second plan, it was a lot of listening to the user community as to what they were feeling, what was important to them, what challenges they have with GIS in their frame of reference. So it's a little different, but I think that when you think about how do you fit the strategic planning into your day-to-day responsibilities, it's like, it's so important that you can't help but you must do that. It's critical It's like you're not going to clean your house because you're too busy, and then you end up having an accident in your house and you go to the hospital and you lose time. You just need to do the strategic plan. Just do it and be happy, and don't try to step around it. I think that it's a good eye-opening experience to see the comments and things that come in from the user base, in the sense that, I think we all try to figure out what others are thinking, and it's great to just sit down with an open mind without trying to think up a response or an answer, and just listen to people. And I think after you speak with a dozen folks or so, it kind of helps you to understand a bigger picture. And I think you're going to get beat up and you're going to get accolades. And I think you kind of have to balance the two and keep them in perspective. Don't let either get you too up or too down. But I don't really remember any surprises as such. I think the big surprises are yet to come in the implementation. I think when you really dive into an agency's business processes and their goals that you are trying to help them achieve, kind of that thought for me is based in this idea that every agency in Utah should be using GIS in their processes at some level, or seeing value in it. And that's kind of my experience with that.
Thanks, Matt. Very enlightening. I'm going to now turn it over to Kate, and Kate's going to talk about what comes after the strategic plan.
All right. So Matt, you've had a little more time than Aaron and Megan to get into implementation, to reflect on what the impact of this plan has been on your organization. But I'd like to ask each of you to reflect on, what is that impact? What has it done for your organization now that it's in the rearview mirror? Can you, talk about how you're maintaining some of that momentum? We recognize it took a lot of energy and focus and time to do the planning work, and now you have all this work ahead of you. Maybe describe some of the ways that you're maintaining that momentum, whether it's with your team or with the GIS community at large. I'm also interested in hearing, what are some of the real tangible outcomes that have come about as part of the planning process? Even if that's just your perspective that's changed. Megan, you were talking about your perspective on your own role and responsibilities in that role. And then maybe touch on, just so that for the audience, so that we really, things feel a little bit more tangible, maybe talk about what was your highest priority goal that you're working on in your state that was recommended as part of this plan. So Megan, let's start with you. I know there's a lot of questions too. So
that was a lot, and I got to make a note of the last one. I got to remember that. So if I miss one, call me out, because I'll try and get all of that. So first of all, actually listening to Matt here, I kind of want to go do another one, because it sounds like the first one really taught you a lot, and then the next one will be better. But I won't do that yet, because we're nowhere near actually accomplishing. I'll share this, and maybe Aaron might share this too. But one of the things that she and I talked about after we finished our plans, because we talked a little bit during our plans and stuff, this state-to-state thing is absolutely amazing. But Aaron and I were like, hey, so now we did the thing. We created the plan, we did the thing we're supposed to do, and now we actually got to go do the thing the plan said to do. So how do we do that? And so she and I are actually working together, and we'll talk maybe in the future on a webinar about how we do this, but creating some mechanisms to track progress. And so for us, with the way that our plan, and it's posted on our website, so you guys can see this, but the way our plan broke down our goals, we can take some of those goals and actually make the subtasks within those goals, right? So those subtasks will help us accomplish some things. So as a result of this, our team, we are far more confident in our communication of the direction of the GIO. We can all share the same words. We all say the same things. And it's also really one of the outcomes to this that was a little bit surprising is it's really strengthened our relationship with the governor's office. We're a governor appointed entity. So you'd think that relationship would be strong already, but government's pretty big, right? So, but it's really helped us engage with those policy folks at the governor's office, and they understand what we do and we understand their direction. So that's certainly been something that I hadn't really anticipated, but really have appreciated. And some of that just also goes to the communication. So the communications business plan is helping us figure out how to communicate what we're doing out to the community. And that includes communicating on the process of our plan. We do a lot of like presentations throughout the year to different GIS user groups and talking with them. And my plan for that, whether it's myself or whether it's our team, every time we can, we report out on the process, the progress of something important in the plan. And for us right now, that's all the things in quadrant 1. It's their top 4 or 5 goals that we're really working on. So those goals that were in quadrant 1 were also part of the process of our business plan. So because of the way that we can measure those things, like accomplishing the things in the business plan will also help us figure out if we're doing the things in the strategic plan. Kate, you asked about how we're like measuring things too. We've woven our goals into our team's goals. So when we're very much about progress and performance and stuff, and being able to track that just at the state. So when I can say one of our team members' goals is directly tied to goal 1.2. And that's been something that we've actually been able to track. So that's kind of been a nice way to keep us constantly measuring whether or not we're doing it beyond just like our annual review that we're also planning to do.
Yeah, Megan, I think that is brilliant because you're weaving it into your operations and keeping it on the forefront of everyone's mind. It can't, as Matt was saying, it can't exist in this separate universe where you have your job and then you have your strategy work. Like you're absolutely right. It needs to be interwoven and there, on everyone's mind every day. So I think that's a great move. Maybe we'll include that in recommendations going forward. Erin, do you have any thoughts on these questions? And we can go back to the question slide if that would be helpful.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that Megan and I have been kind of talking and seeing how we could support each other in our efforts. We're kind of on the same timeline, which has been very helpful, and just kind of comparing what where we are, how we're approaching the way we're implementing our business plans and our strategic plan. And so our first priority is to improve communication with our geospatial stakeholders. And I think that that's the business plan that we have crafted that we're starting to implement. So we've taken that plan, broken out who we're assigning project management to some of the major objectives and tasks as a part of that plan, and really just trying to embrace the tools that are out there that we have adopted as a state or adopted internally as an agency, and just be better at communicating. And we're not we've kind of realized we're not the best cheerleader for ourselves, and that was something that was part of that plan, is to celebrate our wins. And we're kind of we have a lot of staff that do a lot of really remarkable things for the state of Montana, and it's just like when we're done, we might celebrate internally, but we don't do a really good job of communicating the amazing tasks that were completed to our partners. And so that's really important. We also get I think that what's changed is just embracing the role and the ability to say no if it doesn't align with our goals and objectives that were outlined in the strategic plan. We're eventually going to take and implement the strategic plan goals and objectives into our annual land plan to make sure that our annual work plan that is required by statute is aligning to that 5-year plan. and then, of course, reporting to the legislature, how we're doing, and reporting to our council and to our commission. Our council, when we put the strategic plan in front of them, one of our council members, who I highly respect, worked for local government, now represents federal government on our council, had said, I've seen a lot of these come through and they just get shelved, and I don't want to see that happen. And so I definitely took that to heart. We never had the I guess the talk that we weren't going to let that happen. But we plan on reporting to our council quarterly on how we're proceeding forward. And I guess we're at the beginning stages, and we have started putting things into play. So that's where we're at right now. I'm very excited. It does seem a little overwhelming at first, but like I said, the ability to go back to that plan and to say no to the distractions and to say no to the rabbit holes is really empowering.
That's great, Erin. And I think that, you know, having done these types of plans in many states, there are a number of times where we've seen that the communication is underestimated, and that, you know, no matter how much good work you're doing in other areas, if it's not being communicated out, it's you know, no one's aware that those resources are there. So Matt, do you have any thoughts on reflections on after the plan?
Yes, I'm sitting on the park bench and doing the appropriate cocktail thing about the future. So yeah, kind of the reflections, that can be a bit more involved. And I think, you know, first, when I think of these things, I think, okay, well, really, GIS is kind of the fiber that binds society. And so kind of as the lead of an agency of GIS in the state, you're kind of the keeper of the flame, and it feels like a huge responsibility. And so I feel like, okay, well, at some point you have the basics covered, and you need to start to use those basics to approach others, because our Utah idea was, you know, approaching new folks. And so I think a good geocoding process goes a long way into letting you in the doors of many different people. As a GIO, I believe the goal is to make GIS ubiquitous across state government. I think ultimately that's the core of what we're trying to do. So it's important to realize this isn't about something flashy or a new app or things of that sort. The crux of the situation, I feel like, is how do you get people to think spatially, to recognize the value of it, inform their agency goals and inform their business decisions. You know, or sometimes I wonder, is it just this constant barrage that we give people of GIS talk, that one day they'll wake up and say, okay, I see the light. I'm not sure. Sometimes it seems to be very personality dependent. You get someone in there that's really fired up about learning and about visualizing their data so they can make better decisions. Sometimes those people can take you a long way with the executives in an agency. And so I guess the main goal that I think of when I think of the plan is just this idea that every agency in Utah should be doing something with GIS through the course of a year. And they don't need to have like a full-blown GIS implementation. They just need to use you when they need you. And they need to be able to think spatially. So it's not the wins may not seem huge, but you're doing incremental wins to really push it over the edge into GIS happiness. And I think that's, both for you personally and professionally, and for them, you see the light come on for them.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. We'll aim for GIS happiness. I like that as a transition. So I think Mr. Doucette, I think you've been monitoring some questions. I wonder if you want to transition now to opening it up to some questions from the audience for our GIOs. And I think, Matt, your audio is a little shaky. If you want to save some bandwidth, and there we go.
He'll still be here lurking in the
Okay.
shadows for us. I'm sure some questions will pop up. Yeah, thanks, Kate. We do have some great questions coming in, and I just want to thank everybody so far for what has been a really interesting discussion. Our very first one comes in from Danielle, and I just want to remind everyone the chat is open for all of your questions, so feel free to post them there, and we'll get through them. We got about 15 minutes here. So Danielle asks, now that you know what you are to work on and what not to work on by extraction, have you developed your business plans, and what about implementation plans? So I guess Danielle asks, where are you along in that follow-up process? And I guess we can just kind of go around the room real quick, as if each of our presenters wants to make a quick answer.
I go first.
Sure.
So we finalized our strategic plan this past April, and then also started developing our very first business plan, which is completed at this point. And we actually just jumped right back in and are working on with AppGeo, writing and developing the rest of the business plans for implementing the strategic plan. We plan on, said the word plan a lot, we will be integrating those business plans and strategic plans into our annual work plan, which I guess you could consider as an implementation plan. But those are our three plans that we'll be deriving and or have derived, are deriving, be working from.
Thank you, Aaron. Do we want to do Megan next?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. So we outlined to do 3 different business plans, and I think I mentioned earlier, those were prioritized based on what really rose to the top as far as what was the most important thing in our plan. And then from those goals, we said, okay, what do we know how to do and what do we not know how to do? And that's where we decided how we wanted to focus the business plans. And some of those goals were complicated. And one of them was on communications. We're working on that one right now. The 2 that we have completed, one of them is on roles and responsibilities, and the other one's on developing an advisory work group. The roles and responsibilities was really important because one of our goals was to right-size the office. We have a very large charge of things to do and a very, very small team. How do we grow? And it was an assessment of where we spend our time. It was one of the most interesting processes I've ever been through. So I really appreciated that, quantifying those things that you don't know where you're spending your time or how you might be losing that time. And that process really helped us do that. And then the advisory work group is, how do we reach out? How do we engage the right folks to help us move those pieces forward? Communications plan is both internal and external. So we've started on the roles and responsibilities. We've started to grow the team. That's been the implementation, I guess, if you will. What it came out of that was prioritizing what positions to add first based on importance. And that's the implementation. We haven't started the implementation for the advisory work group yet. Ideally, we'll have that started by the end of the year, when said new staff get brought up to everybody's on the team. And then we're going through the comms plan right now.
Excellent. And I think lastly, if Matt wants to chime in, do you just roll the dice to figure out what you do, or what are you doing down there?
Yeah, I do roll the dice. So what I do is when the plan was complete, the last plan was complete, there was an executive summary. It had X number of things for me to focus on. And one in particular was try to get away from fee-for-service work. Another was and it leaves my mind, but let's focus on the fee-for-service. And what the issue was is that if you're always reaching out, trying to figure out where your funding is coming from, you can't really be strategic, for lack of a better term. And so that was a big focus. So immediately I started to try to reach out to our legislative people and get more money so we could be closer to being fully funded, like Tim Johnson of North Carolina. And so for me, the main hit list is just to look at, always review every week or two, review the executive summary of the strategic plan and make sure we're moving each piece forward, because the idea of engaging new customers or old customers in new ways is something I have a hard time wrapping my head around, and having a hard time figuring out how to engage those people, how to strike a conversation with them, because most of these people, it's through an email. So that's kind of a challenge.
Absolutely. Great responses all around. We have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll be sure if we'll circulate these among the team too, and we can probably reach out via email if we can't go as in-depth as you'd like on today's call, but we're going to try to get to all of these. I really like this next question. It's strategic plans are usually created with a 3 to 5 year horizon. So how do you balance direction setting at the outset while maintaining some ability to course correct in future years out? Which, it's very interesting to think about. You're planning 3 to 5 years ahead, and priorities can change on an instant. So how do you manage that challenge? And if anyone wants to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, I can jump in for just a second on that one. I feel like I guess I'm saying your plan shouldn't be so damn tight. I believe that you need to have flexibility in there, that there's some amount in your plan that says that you need to sit back and look at the direction, look at how things are going, and be able to kind of read the cards or read the tea leaves and make those course adjustments without violating your plan.
Absolutely.
I'll add to that quickly. The keeping track is really important, but continuous outreach to the stakeholders for us in the government space. I mean, by the time this plan is finished or through the 5 years, we'll have a different governor. That changes our priorities sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Also, the state agency priorities change, the agencies that we support. So being sure that we are always checking in, and I agree with Matt, course correct where you need to. The plan is a live document, and that's something that we've needed to hold true to as well, that you can make adjustments if you need to. Note what things changed. You pick a note, this did work, this didn't work, what we changed and why we did it, and then continue to move forward.
I might just chime in that I think that reflects the relationship between the strategic plan and the business plan too, that I think more often it's your tactics and your methods in the business plan that might change. Like, oh, okay, that didn't work. We're gonna shift gears and try something else. But really you're guided by that vision, by that overall vision of what you're trying to achieve. What is that outcome you're trying to achieve? And it's the micro adjustments within there that you want to leave room for. So I would agree with you, Matt, that it shouldn't be so tight that you're breaking it if you course correct. And it also is about weaving it into, as Megan talked about, weaving it into your business operationally, so that you're constantly looking at it and recalibrating and adjusting as new information is coming onto the scene, as your organization changes, as technology changes, as your governor changes, all of those things, that recalibration should be always on the table without losing sight of a broader vision.
All right. Thanks again for the great answers all around. We have some more questions to get to. This is a good one. And we have a couple answers in the chat coming through already, but are any of these plans shareable to the public? And if so, can you share the URL? I think we can even elaborate on that a little bit by saying, how have you all made your plans, let's say, more approachable and more engaging for stakeholders? And also, where's the best place that our audience can track them down? I'm sure we can put in an email as well, but just that aspect of engaging the public with these plans would be really cool to hear about.
I can start there. So I put mine in the dropped a link into the chat. But we will plan on monitoring and measuring progress and our success throughout the length of the plan, and same with business plans as well. And so we plan on making that available in a kind of very high level, and just basically reporting our high level strategic goals and objectives that we have achieved, trying to make it a little more understandable for the non-geospatial professional, and probably be using story maps and other types of dashboards to support our progress moving forward.
A dashboard, Aaron, that sounds awesome. We put our strategic plan into a story map, really just for that reason, to try and make it as shareable, as engaging. We'll also, if we can do story map, let's do it, why not? But we didn't want a document that could potentially end up on a shelf somewhere, or even digital shelf, right? So the story map also, since we can edit it, we can republish it, make adjustments, and make notes about where we're headed, link to other things that are showing our progress too.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And we can definitely share examples of those with the audience. I'm sure they'd love to explore what's in there. I want to get through as many of these questions as we can. Let's see, we have one that came in from Liz a little while ago. How closely related are your foundational GIS data creation functions versus GIS business application functions for your supported agencies? So I guess, that foundational data building role versus the business application side of the fence. If anyone wants to take a stab at that one.
Well, I could start to take a stab if I follow it correctly. I think that I almost feel like this one is a half-hour talk, but I think there's a real challenge in making sure you're using configurable apps as opposed to creating new applications for those business side things. Because those will eventually consume you, and you won't be able to do the other side, the data side, those core functions that you do. You got to be careful about application development taking over your world, and I think that's part of your strategic plan, is to make sure that you don't go down some of those paths. Did I even come close?
I think so. That might be another one where we can circle back, just due to the complexity of the question. We have at least one more here, and this one I think we almost anticipated a little bit, but it comes in from Jean, and they're saying they work for local government at the county level and have thought of developing a county-wide planning document, and they say, I'm finding at this scale it may not meet specific departmental needs, and as such I'm contemplating a bottom-up planning approach in developing a targeted planning process with specific departments who are interested in geo-enabling their programs to better serve their internal workflows and the constituents that they serve. So I think the question part here is, do you see any roadblocks in this approach of planning at the county level?
Well, I'm not sure I see any roadblocks, but I must admit one thing, that this is why UGRC, why Utah hired AppGeo, is because there's such a breadth and depth of people that have been fooling in GIS for 15 plus years, and some even more, much more. And so when I was looking around of who could help with a plan, you know, when you're thinking about that gentleman that just asked that question, it's like you need a team of people that has a lot of experience at a lot of different levels, that have worked at a lot of different places. And I think that's why, yeah, I'll go along with that guy, but just get the right team to help.
I can make a comment there too, because we've done a lot of local government strategic planning as well. And I think the one risk, if I'm understanding, Jean, the one risk is that you would end up with a long task list coming from each division or department versus an overall vision where, you know, what you're doing is serving all of those departments. So I think the planning process definitely is bottom up in that you give all of your stakeholders an opportunity to describe what it is that they're trying to do and how they want to geo-enable their workflows. But then you want that to bubble up to an overall approach for, you know, what platforms should you support? How do you support, you know, professional development and training across the whole enterprise? You know, how do you provide the support that's needed and the data that's needed across all of those departments? So I think it's bottom up in terms of requirements, but the visioning and the strategy part has to be at the enterprise level. But again, happy to talk further with anyone about that.
And Kate, if I could pipe in a little on this one as well, I think there's a bit of a philosophical question that underpins this, and that is, you know, when you're in, you know, a GIS support role, whether it's at the county level or with a state office, you have to really decide whether your purpose is to be the provider of those GIS services or an enabler of those GIS services. Because if you decide you're in the provider role, that has a lot of limitations on how much it can scale up. Because if you're going to be performing the GIS functions for the constituent agencies, there's a lot, there'll be a lot of frustration that you don't have capacity to deal with all of those needs. And I think the more powerful, but in many ways more challenging role is to be that enabler and focus on the reusable components, whether they're, you know, data sets or APIs and applications that cut across a wide range of uses, like geocoding, for example. Having a standard geocoder that everybody can use is a great reusable service. So I think you really need to be asking yourself that hard question about what are you trying to do, be a provider or an enabler.
Well put, Bill. And that brings us to the end of the hour. I want to thank everybody for being part of this. Some really engaging questions. I'm sure we'll reach back out to some of you via email. And yeah, I can pass it back over to Amy. It looks like you're popping on here to
could I insert one more thing here?
Please.
We do have the NSGIC conference is coming up in just a few short weeks, and we've signed up to provide an on-demand presentation, which we just recorded, and it is actually from our team of folks that do these strategic plans, talking about in a lot more detail some of the insights we've learned about strategic planning from a variety of perspectives. So for those of you that'll be registering for the conference, we would invite you to check out that on-demand presentation if you're interested in learning more about strategic planning.
You're gonna love it.
Well,
And-
thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Kate. Or
I was just going to say that Megan, Matt, and I will be there as well. So if you want to hear the nitty gritty, please come and grab us.
Well, thank you, all of you, for this wonderful presentation. And thank you for everyone attending today. Are there any last words from you guys? Oh, Okay,
I'll add just one thing, Amy, real quick.
yeah,
If you're thinking about doing a plan, understand why you want to do it first. I think that is a really critical piece because that's going to serve you throughout the entire planning process, which is not easy. But so if you're like on the cusp, figure out why, and that'll kind of put you over the edge a little bit in a good way.
thank you, Megan, for that last thought. So once again, thank you, Megan, Aaron, Matt, Kate, Michelle, Bill, and Aaron for moderating. And thank you, NSGIC audience, for attending today's webinar. And once again, this will be sent out, a recording will be sent out, so keep a lookout for that email. And yeah, have a great day, everyone. Thank you again.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Bye.